There are 5 positions the Minnesota Vikings have that are opening on the starting lineup that players are playing for. This is a positional battle. You see this happen a lot in off seasons where a lot of coaches will draft players. They will take players in free agency, really just to play for that position and see who is the best player, and they will win that starting lineup or that starting position on the lineup. Starting with the 5th position, and that would be slot receiver. Now, a lot of Vikings fans say that going into this offseason, the Vikings had to focus on wide receiver. And I was one of those players who I believe that the Vikings should have focused on getting a wide receiver 3 because you have BC Johnson, he's a really good backup outside wide receiver. He is not a wide receiver 3. You have Chad Bibi, who looked like a solid wide receiver 3, made some splashy plays last year. However, he's also injury prone, and he's Chad Bibi. He's not as good as a wide receiver 3 could be. But the more I look at it, the less we actually need a wide receiver 3. Yes, we need a slot wide receiver, but we don't actually need a wide receiver 3. And the reason why is because Irv Smith Jr. is our third best wide receiver, or our third best receiver. He's not a wideout, but he can play that slot wide receiver role. If the Vikings have, because we have obviously the top 3 wide receiver duo in the NFL with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, they can play as outside wide receivers. And then you have Dalvin Cook in the backfield, which you run the rock around him. This is how your offense is built. You have CJ Ham, obviously, at fullback. And then you can use 2 tight end sets with Irv Smith Jr., with Tyler Conklin. We don't actually need to play Chad Beebe and BC Johnson as much as we did last year. I don't see it to be a necessary role to fill for the Minnesota Vikings. So Irv Smith Jr. is that role for the Minnesota Vikings where he will get the 3rd most targets this upcoming season. Now, obviously, injuries could change that, but assuming he doesn't get injured, he will get the 3rd most targets this upcoming season, and he will be that slot wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. However, this is a positional battle. There's a lot of players who are playing for that role, although I do believe it should be Irv Smith Jr. You also have Chad Beebe, who was our wide receiver 3, slot wide receiver last year. He made some plays, had 2 touchdowns, and he held his own. He was making plays from the slot. And then BC Johnson, obviously 3rd-year player. He's coming back. He filled in for Adam Thielen when he was injured. He had a 2-point conversion, didn't get a touchdown last year, but he's another pretty good player. And then Amir Smith-Marcet, who the Vikings drafted in the 5th round and is also playing for that role. Amir Smith-Marcet is also playing for the kick return role right now, which I don't have special teams on this list. This is offense and defensive positions. But if I were to put special teams on this list, I would put that because Amir Smith-Marcet, KJ Osborne, who shouldn't get the role again, and then you have Kene Nwanu, you have Chad Beebe. All these players are playing for that kick and punt return role, so I could have put that on this list too. I'm just thinking of that now. And then another one is cornerback. Now, Vikings once again, for I don't know how many years it's been in a row, has focused on corner in the offseason. This time it wasn't very much the draft. The Vikings didn't draft a corner, not that I can think of right now. The Vikings didn't draft a corner, but they brought in a lot of corners in free agency. Thing is, we don't know who our corners are going to be, who our starting corners are going to be. We don't know who our slot corner is going to be. We don't know how this list is going to go, and that's why there's a positional battle here, which right now, on the depth chart, Cameron Dantzler is our starting cornerback 1. He's a lengthy corner. I was not very high on this guy coming out of Mississippi State, but wow, did he have an incredible rookie season. So he is well deserving of that starting role, but even if he doesn't get it, we have Patrick Peterson, we have Rashad Breeland, we have Jeff Gladney, Mackenzie Alexander. These are all players who are playing for those starting outside corners. Now, Cameron Dantzler, Patrick Peterson, and Rashad Breeland, those are the 3 players who are playing for the starting outside corner positions. Jeff Gladney and Mackenzie Alexander, they're playing for those nickelback slot corner positions because that's pretty much how they're valued. That's where their position should be. So that's kind of what Jeff Gladney and Mackenzie Alexander are playing for and so forth. So really everywhere as a corner, these players are playing for those positions. Next, we have 3rd linebacker. Now, I already went over how poor of a decision it was to let Eric Wilson go. Vikings could have easily have brought back Eric Wilson. We have $13 million in cap space, and Eric Wilson is getting paid $2.75 with the Philadelphia Eagles. Vikings could have brought him back as a 3rd linebacker. We didn't need to let him go and try to replace his role. There is no reason why the Minnesota Vikings should have made that rule. However, 3rd linebacker, now that we don't have Eric Wilson, these players are all playing for that position. Those players are Nick Vigil, who the Vikings brought in free agency, Troy Dye, 2nd-year player that the Vikings drafted out of Oregon, Cameron Smith, I believe he's a 3rd-year player for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm actually very high on Cameron Smith. I think he has a incredible role, I think his ceiling is a lot higher than people are positioning him, putting him at. I think he has the highest ceiling out of any player on this list. Because if he can get that pass rushing roll down, I believe Cameron Smith can honestly take this spot. Which, yes, he's not Troy Dye, he's not Nick Vigil yet, but he can get there and more. So I'm very high on Cameron Smith. And then Chaz Surratt, who the Vikings drafted in the 3rd round out of UNC. Now, Chaz Surratt, obviously, he is not ready to take that starting role. He's relatively new to the position as well, but I do believe with Andre Patterson, with Mike Zimmer, with Adam Zimmer, they can develop this guy into the starting role going into the future as a pass rusher. As of right now, though, he is not ready to be in that position. And then Ryan Connolly and Blake Lynch. Blake Lynch, we did get to see a little bit of last year. He was an undrafted player in 2020, I believe it was. He's likely going to be on the practice squad or not on the roster this upcoming season. And then with Ryan Connolly, I hate to say it, but I also do not believe Ryan Connolly will be on the active roster this upcoming season. Now, the reason why I say I hate to say it, not only is a 5th round draft pick, and you'd want to see 5th round draft picks be on your roster for at least 4 years. He's also from Minnesota. He grew up in Eden Prairie, so he's a Minnesota native, but I don't believe he has any role on this Minnesota Vikings team. So I don't think he'll make the roster as well. And then next up we have guard. So this is, like I've said on this podcast a million times, going into this offseason, offensive guard was the biggest need for the Minnesota Vikings. And there was no doubt about it. The Vikings allowed far too many pressures on the interior side of the line. Not only that, but we suffered with injuries, and we saw too many players who looked so awful last year that we do not want to see any more of this upcoming season. So I believe there's 4 players right now who are playing for that starting offensive guard role. And no, none of those players are Drew Samia. We're not going to put him on this list because he also should not be on the roster this upcoming season. Those players are Ezra Cleveland, 2nd-year player out of Boise State, Dakota Dozier. Hopefully he is not up there. Hopefully he does not get the role again. When I look at ESPN or anywhere, when I look at the Vikings depth charts, they still have Dakota Dozier as a starting left guard. There is no way Dakota Dozier is going to be our starting left guard this upcoming season. He is going to be that bumper player that you move into that role if need be. And then Wyatt Davis and Rashad Hill. Now, Rashad Hill is an excellent backup left tackle, but he's also played guard in the past. And Rashad Hill is our best backup offensive lineman we have on this list. So if he's a backup left tackle, he can also be a backup left guard or starting right guard possibly too if Wyatt Davis does not work. Wyatt Davis, 3rd round draft pick out of Ohio State. It could also be a starting right guard. He's played some snaps at right guard during team OTAs and during practices. So I do believe Wyatt Davis has a very high possibility of getting that starting right guard role right out of college as a 3rd round draft pick, which is very impressive. And then the biggest positional value on the Vikings starting lineup is at right defensive end. Now, obviously, Danielle Hunter has that left defensive end role locked down. He is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. With that being said, we don't know who is going to be alongside Danielle Hunter. Is it going to be 2nd-year players out of South Carolina, DJ Wonnum? He's expected to be, however, we love Vikings fans. We love DJ Wonnum. Obviously, he's a 4th round draft pick, impressive 4th round draft pick for the Minnesota Vikings. He's being developed into a starter. And he also, not to mention, he won the game against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field, where he forced that game-winning fumble. So DJ Wonnum, very loved by Minnesota Vikings fans as a rookie, making that much of a splash in the NFL. And then Stephen Weatherly, who the Vikings brought in free agency, brought back in free agency after being cut from the Carolina Panthers, and drafting Patrick Jones and Janarius Robinson in the 3rd and 4th round of this year's draft. So the Vikings made a lot of moves to fill at the right defensive end position for this very reason, so these players can play for that starting role. Whoever gets this right defensive end position, whoever's earned that starting role, they will have earned that. They will have fought for that role because all 4 of these players can play for that role, and whoever's the best pass rusher, just put them out there and hope they can do their job. DJ Wonnum was our best pass rusher last year, and that's not saying a whole lot. Well, take away Yannick Ngakoue, who played with us 4 games. Take away that. DJ Wonnum was our best pass rusher, far better than Jalen Holmes, who shouldn't even be on the roster this upcoming season, far better than Afadio Denebo, and all of our linebackers that played as well. So that's going to wrap up this part. Who do you think is going to win that right defensive end role? Because, of course, DJ Wonnum is very loved. I can't say anything bad about DJ Wonnum. He won us the game against the Green Bay Packers. But on top of that, is he ready to be a starter? Not to mention the fact that even Danielle Hunter, I mean, it's possible he's going to get traded. People are talking about, no, I do not think he's going to get traded. However, with that being said, we haven't seen him in a whole year. He hasn't played in the NFL for a whole year. Who knows how he's going to look? Is he going to be 2018 Danielle Hunter and 2019 Danielle Hunter? I do not know. He hasn't played a full year in the NFL. Same with Anthony Barr, second best pass rusher. Is he going to be 2016, 2017 Anthony Barr? I don't think so, because the last time we saw Anthony Barr play a full season, it wasn't very impressive in 2019. He got pancaked by Jimmy Garoppolo. So I don't know how I'm going to expect a big pass rush is going to be a big issue this upcoming season. Danielle Hunter and Anthony Barr have been excellent pass rushers, but we haven't seen them in so long. So who knows how they're going to be when they come back. With that being said, we should have a better pass rush than we had last year. And that's not saying a whole lot. We should just be able to apply more pressure on the quarterback than last year. So even if it's not an impressive season, when it comes to rushing the passer, we can say at least it was better than it was last year. And our interior defensive tackles, we're not even going to talk about those guys. Those guys weigh 315 pounds, which is pretty good for, I mean, you do want size in your defensive tackles because that's how you get to that's how you stop the run. That's how you close inside the pocket. And that's what you want. However, with that being said, they will have a hard time getting to these quarterbacks. You're not going to see Michael Pierce and Dalvin Tomlinson racking up very many sacks. You need Danielle Hunter to be your sack guy, and you need whoever is going to be the right defensive end to get those pressures for Danielle Hunter or vice versa, because defensive end duos are very important. So who do you think is going to be taking these roles? And let me know what you guys' list is.